I am 25 years old and currently a housewife. My husband Michael and I originally knew each other from work and saw each other often. I was attracted to Michael's caring and dependable nature, and I approached him. We started dating, and 2 years later we were married. Since our marriage, the three of us have been living with my mother-in-law at his parents' home. It seems that Michael's father passed away when Michael was very young, and my mother-in-law has raised Michael by herself all this time. Michael has always been very protective of my mother-in-law. When we got married, we thought about living two of us, but decided to respect Michael's desire not to leave my mother-in-law alone. Even if you have to live with my mother-in-law, that's fine with me.
Are you sure about that? I think my mom would be happy too.
I chose to live with her because I wanted to take care of Michael's loved ones as well. I had no idea that it would turn out like that at that time. As soon as we moved into my parents-in-law's house, my mother-in-law began to snore at her daughter-in-law. When we got married, we were both still working and I came home late from work, so I often asked my mother-in-law to cook dinner for us. Thank you for dinner, mother-in-law.
Was it good?
Yes, it was. Can you teach me how to cook it next time?
Of course.
In front of Michael, my mother-in-law was very kind, but once we were alone in the kitchen, she became a different person. My mother-in-law, I help you to wash dishes.
Of course. Did you intend to make me do all the washing up?
No, I didn't mean.
Just get on with it.
Yes. She said this in a very cold way, without making eye contact with me.
I'm appalled that you would make me cook for you, even though you're my daughter-in-law.
But it was my mother-in-law who insisted on cooking. She wanted Michael to think well of her even though I said I would cook dinner, and she said, "You must be tired, Emily, since you both work, right? It's okay, I'll cook." She would tell me so with a smile and play the role of a kind mother-in-law. Behind his back, she would sarcastically ask me why I made her cook for me. Michael naturally had no idea what my mother-in-law was like behind the scenes, so he told me, "Mom says so, too, so why don't you have her cook dinner for you?" It's okay to take advantage of my mom's kindness. I couldn't refuse and asked my mother-in-law to cook for me, and the next day she said, "Why did Michael get such a wife? She can't even cook well, isn't she a disqualified wife?" She said that to me when we were alone. Don't keep working forever, become a full-time housewife and support Michael. She often told me to become a full-time housewife. My mother-in-law seems to be dissatisfied with my working and has repeatedly told me, "If you can't manage both housework and work, then quit your job." She has repeatedly told me so. I thought about talking to Michael about it, but he was very protective of my mother-in-law, and it would be hard for Michael and my mother-in-law to get on bad terms because of me. I couldn't talk to Michael about it, so I just endured it. But she still pestered me day after day, so I decided to quit my job and become a full-time housewife. I gave my resignation notice half-heartedly, thinking that I would say to my mother-in-law that you would have no complaint. To be honest, I didn't want to quit because I liked my job and was able to buy things I liked. I also wanted to save as much money as possible for our future, but I was fed up with my mother-in-law repeatedly telling me to quit. After I became a housewife, I started doing all the housework. I also started cooking every day. However, my mother-in-law's darkness never disappeared.
Today's meal was bad. What do you mean? Did you do your bride training properly?
She said sarcastically in a voice that Michael could not hear. But Michael said it was delicious.
Michael is just trying to be nice to you. It was really bad.
I'm sorry.
There's no point in quitting your job. You might as well have been earning money.
You were the one who insisted that I should quit. I screamed in my mind. You complained no matter what I did, but when I did what my mother-in-law said, that's what she complained about. I think my mother-in-law just wants to be sarcastic with me. I was home with my mother-in-law all day long, so during the day she could say whatever she wanted.
Michael could have gotten a better wife. Why did he marry someone like you?
Well,
You're not beautiful, you're a bad cook, and you can't take care of herself. You don't have any good qualities.
I'm sorry. She kept following me around while I was doing the housework, not helping me and just being sarcastic.
Hey, there's dust in the corner here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can't you even clean up? I'll make you do it all over again from the beginning. I'm sorry. You should at least help me a little. I thought so in my mind, but I didn't know what she would say if I talked back. It would probably come back to me many times over, and I decided to just listen. I couldn't talk back or even talk to Michael about it, so the stress just kept piling up. Then one day, I ended up having a high fever of over 39 degrees. I had not been feeling well since the night before and wondered if I would get better after sleeping. But by the next morning, it was even worse.
You look pale. Are you okay?
Michael, who was getting ready to go to work, asked worriedly. My head hurts and my joints hurt, and my body feels really tired.
Did you catch a cold? Did you take your temperature?
I just took it and it was 39 degrees.
What, 39 degrees? That's tough.
Michael hurriedly brought me a wet towel and a drink.
I'll leave some water and medicine here for you to drink after you eat.
I'm sorry. It's time for you to go to work.
If I hurry, I can make it in time. If you are in pain and can't help yourself, why don't you ask my mother to come in and accompany you to the hospital?
I guess so. Michael said so, but I can't ask my mother-in-law to do it. What would she say if I told her I caught a cold? I shuddered just imagining it.
Well, I'm going to work.
Take care. I hoped that if I stayed in bed for a while, my condition would improve a little, but it never got better, and it just kept getting harder and harder. My body was dizzy, and I could barely stand up. As expected, I could not even go to the hospital on my own without my mother-in-law accompanying me. Just as I was thinking this, the bedroom door suddenly opened.
How long are you going to stay in bed? That's enough.
My mother-in-law came into the bedroom, yelling at me. I'm sorry, I caught a cold.
A cold. You just overslept and made excuses like a child.
No, I didn't. My mother-in-law thought I was making excuses and didn't listen to me at all. It's been 39 degrees and I'm not feeling well. If it's possible, I'd like you to accompany me to the hospital.
Why should I take care of you? If you want to go to the hospital, go alone. Don't depend on me, okay?
My mother-in-law threw terrible words at me in spite of my weakness.
More importantly, has my breakfast been ready yet? Don't just lie there pretending to be sick, get on with it.
I felt like talking back, but I didn't have the energy to do so. I was so sorry, but I don't think I can make it today. When I said this, her face changed color and she became angry.
Are you still my daughter-in-law? If you are, you're supposed to cook even if you are a little sick, right? If you can't even do that, I'm going to have to ask you for a divorce.
She went on and on. If I didn't cook, she would keep insisting until I did, so I had no choice but to cook. If I did, she wouldn't complain anymore for the time being. Anyway, I couldn't stand the sound of my mother-in-law's high-pitched voice echoing in my head. I managed to get up, went to the kitchen in my pajamas, and started preparing food. At first, I decided to serve leftovers from yesterday, bread, soup, and frozen fried chickens that I had defrosted. She might say I'm lazy, but it was hard for me to cook even this much food now. It took more than twice as long as usual. Just as I was about to call my mother-in-law, I received a phone call from Michael.
How are you feeling?
I've even worse than before.
I see. I was worried after all, so I left work early. I'm on my way home now.
Michael was so worried about me that he went out of his way to come home early. Thank you. Michael's kindness almost made me burst into tears. Can I keep the phone connected?
Well, okay, but I'm arriving home soon.
Okay. I called my mother-in-law to the dining table with Michael on the phone. Mother-in-law, breakfast is ready. She came out of her room and glared at me.
How long is it taking you? It's already late. You really are a useless wife.
I'm sorry.
Geez, what is this meal? It's not cut out no matter how you look at it. There's nothing in the soup but onion, and yesterday's leftovers and frozen fried chickens.
As soon as my mother-in-law saw what I had cooked, she was in a frenzy of complaints.
How could you be so lazy? Are you trying to harass me? I'm sure it's only a matter of time before Michael dumps you.
I'm sorry, that's all I can cook.
It's your fault for not taking care of yourself that you caught a cold in the first place. It's your fault and it's bothering us too. I'm forced to eat like this.
She didn't know that Michael was listening and continued to sarcasm one after the other. After taking a bite of bread, she said, I can't believe you served leftovers from yesterday. Isn't it your job to take care of the leftovers? You should eat it. My patience was wearing thin, so I decided to tell my mother-in-law. My husband is listening to this conversation.
What?
She widely opened her eyes in surprise. I set my cell phone on speaker mode so that Michael's voice could be heard by my mother-in-law.
Mom, I've heard everything.
Huh? Michael, why?
She was obviously upset and distraught.
Hey, you. Why are you calling him?
She yelled at me in a loud voice. Then I heard a sound at the front door and turned around to see Michael had just returned.
What? Why? What's wrong with your job?
My mother-in-law was even more upset.
Emily had a fever and was having a hard time, so I left early and came home.
My mother-in-law was astonished.
Why did you let Emily cook your breakfast? What's more, why did you let her cook for you and then complain like that? On the contrary, why don't you make her porridge or something?
No, it's not like that.
What's not like that? Emily has a fever. Do you understand that? Prepare your own meal.
Michael was angry with a scary face that I had never seen before. My mother-in-law was shocked because the always gentle Michael was getting angry at her with a terrible sword face, and she started to cry.
I'm sorry.
I almost laughed when I saw her crying and apologizing over and over again.
Perhaps you always say things like that when I'm not around.
My mother-in-law seemed very reluctant to say, no, it was more for the sake of Emily's guidance. I was irritated when my mother-in-law started making excuses. For my sake? Please don't make me laugh. I've heard nothing but complaints and sarcasm from you. When I said this, she looked down and fell silent.
I was really shocked that my own mother was such a lousy person. If you don't take good care of Emily, we'll leave.
No.
Even Emily doesn't want to live with her any longer, right?
Of course I was at my limit and there was no need to defend my mother-in-law, so I said what I really thought. I don't want to live with her anymore.
Then let's leave.
It's so sudden.
I won't forgive anyone who hurts Emily, even my mom.
Michael's words made me weep. I am glad I married this man, I thought sincerely. On the other hand, my mother-in-law was also crying in the opposite sense.
I'm sorry.
She suddenly got down on her knees and started apologizing. I felt sorry for her desperation, as if she didn't expect to be told to leave.
It's useless to do that.
Michael coldly called out to my mother-in-law, who was on her knees.
I'll go pack my bags, Emily, and wait for me.
Okay. After a while, Michael came out of the room with a carry-on case.
Let's go. Can you stand up?
I was so dizzy that I could barely stand up, but he supported me and took me to the entrance.
Wait a minute.
As Michael was about to leave, my mother-in-law grabbed his arm and cried, "Please don't go out." She cried.
I bought the washing machine and refrigerator, didn't I? I'll ask you to return them.
When we first moved in, Michael had a new washing machine and refrigerator that were a little bigger for the three of us to live in.
Why? What should I do then?
I don't know anything about that, but I bought them and didn't give it to you. I'll ask the vendor to pick it up later.
Michael shook off her hand and said, "I'm going to cut it off." We left the house, leaving the sobbing mother-in-law at home. We decided to go to the hospital first to have me checked out. According to the doctor, stress and overwork were the cause. There was only one thing that came to mind. I think the stress that had been building up because of my mother-in-law had exploded all at once. I was so tired from everything today that I fell asleep in the car on the way home from the hospital.
Emily, we've arrived.
Michael woke me up and I found myself at my parents' house.
I explained the situation to my mother-in-law and asked her to let us stay over for the time being.
Oh, I see. He seemed to have been doing a lot of things while I was sleeping, like calling my mother. I was able to sleep peacefully at my parents' house for the first time in a while. The next day, my fever had gone down to a low grade and I was feeling much better. I think it was probably caused by stress, just like the doctor said. Within a couple of days, I was completely fine.
I talked to my mother-in-law and father-in-law. Would you like to move in here?
Huh? I was very happy because I never thought he would say such a thing to me. But you don't mind?
I'm totally fine with it. I want you to live in peace from now on because I feel sorry for my mom's behavior until now.
Michael thought of me first and decided to live with my parents. We then moved in with my parents. Later, my mother-in-law once rode up to my parents' house.
Give me back Michael. I only have my son.
She cried out loudly at the entrance of the house.
I feel sorry about what I did to Emily. This is the way it is, so forgive me.
Saying that, the mother-in-law bowed her head deeply. But I have no intention of forgiving her at all. It is natural that I cannot forgive her because she said such terrible things when I was at my weakest. I never wanted to live with her or see her face again. Please leave.
I don't want to. I won't move from here until I bring Michael back.
My mother-in-law started to sit at the door, spoiled like a child. My mother said, "You are bothering me, please leave. I will call the police." But she continued to sit there without saying a word. Then Michael came home from work.
What are you doing here?
Please forgive me. You're the only family I have.
Again, my mother-in-law cried out to Michael. Michael shook her hand again and said, "You got what you deserved. I've cut myself off from you, so don't come here again. Go home." He yelled at her. Then, "Did your mother-in-law open up again and finally complain to me, you thieving cat?" She then left with a final expletive, as if she wanted to complain to me. After that, my mother-in-law has been living alone at her parents-in-law's house. Neighbors say that she has been staying at home with a gloomy look on her face. As for us, we were happy. The reason is that we are expecting a baby boy this year. Both father and mother are very excited to see their grandson. Every day at dinner, the four of us talk about what lessons we want him to learn, what sports we want him to play, and so on. Of course, I have not reported to my mother-in-law that I have a child, so she must know nothing about it. I felt really sorry for her because she would not be able to see her son or grandchildren because of her own words and actions, as if she were someone else.